My name is Marcus. I'm 28 years old, and apparently the only one in my family who still believes in honesty and basic decency. I work in IT, the kind of job where you never really log off. You just shift tabs between spreadsheets and life. For the past 5 years, I've lived in the same modest apartment about 30 minutes from my parents' house, and for just as long, I've been the guy they call when the Wi-Fi's down, when the fridge is making a weird noise, or when someone forgot to pay the electric bill and needs a last-minute Venmo to keep the lights on. I never complained. Not really. I figured that's what family does. We help. We show up. We carry the weight when others can't. I told myself it was noble, that being reliable mattered. I just didn't realize that to them. I wasn't a person, I was a backup plan with a debit card. All of that changed over one dinner. It was a Sunday, the usual roast chicken, mismatched dishes, and the lemony smell of furniture polish lingering from Mom's frantic cleaning spree. I was tired, overworked, and barely functioning after a week of back-to-back deployments at the office. But I was also excited for one reason: the trip. We'd been planning a family vacation to Greece for months. I'd chipped in $2,300 to help cover bookings, flights, group accommodations, even a rental van my dad insisted was more practical than taxis. Mom called it a chance to reconnect. Just the core family. She said, like old times. So, when there was a lull in conversation, I smiled, leaned in, and said, "I'm so excited for the trip next week. I've been counting down since we booked it." The room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone's about to burst out laughing at a joke. The kind where you feel like someone just pulled the plug on the atmosphere, and no one knows what to do next. My brother, Shawn, looked at me and chuckled. "You're joking, right?" he said, nudging his fiancée like I just told the world's worst punchline. "We got back yesterday." I blinked. "What?" My mom put her fork down slowly. "Sweetie," she started, but couldn't finish. Aunt Lena, clearly trying to change the subject, pulled out her phone. "Oh, the photos turned out so well," she said, scrolling through her gallery like this wasn't happening. She turned the screen toward me, and there it was. A sun-drenched cliffside in Santorini, my parents, Shawn and his fiancée, Aunt Lena, Uncle Derek, even the twins who couldn't get time off school, all of them, smiling, laughing. Everyone except me. I stared for a second, heart hammering, brain stuttering. I remembered the last group chat update 2 weeks ago. Mom had said, "Still finalizing dates. We'll loop back this weekend." I followed up twice. No response. I assumed they were just busy. I pushed my chair back, slow and deliberate. No one stopped me. No one explained. Not even Shawn, who muttered something like drama queen as I walked past. I drove straight home, didn't even change out of my dress shirt, just sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. I wasn't sad, not at first, just empty, numb. You ever have a moment where you realize the people you thought were your home base quietly moved on without you? That's what this was. That's what it felt like. And the worst part, I wasn't surprised. I kept replaying little things. Mom saying she'd let me know the final itinerary. Dad calling me the reliable one when he asked for my card to finish the booking. Shawn brushing off travel questions with, "I think Mom's got it." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just let the silence settle over me like dust. That cold, weightless kind of grief where everything starts to click, and none of it feels real, but all of it feels intentional. The next morning, I called in sick. Not because I was physically sick, but because my entire life felt off-kilter. I opened my laptop and started combing through my finances. I hadn't looked closely in months, maybe years, and what I found hit me like a freight train. 2 months of rent I covered for Shawn, $100 for a new fridge at my parents' house, groceries, monthly utilities, group subscriptions I paid for without a second thought, promises to pay me back that turned into jokes. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd used me, and then left me behind. That's when something inside me shifted. Quiet, sharp, irreversible. I started making a list. Every account, every payment, every shared login, Netflix, family phone plans, car insurance, all still in my name, all still bleeding from my wallet. By Wednesday, the Netflix password was changed. By Friday, the family phone plan was split. I moved my number and let the rest lapse. Canceled the insurance, sent written notices. No one responded. I closed the emergency fund I'd set up after Mom's knee surgery, $5,700, mine now. I froze my Venmo and PayPal so there'd be no accidental requests. The only time anyone reached out was Saturday morning. Mom called once. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. The next Sunday dinner came and went. I didn't show. Neither did the usual groceries I delivered every weekend like clockwork. And then, a week after the Grease reveal, Shawn showed up at my apartment. He knocked once. I checked the peephole. Same cocky smirk he wore when he borrowed money or won at poker. "Dude," he said. The moment I opened the door, "You're seriously blowing this out of proportion. It was a last-minute thing. We didn't think you'd be able to go." I just stared at him. "You told me the trip was next week. I helped pay for it." He rolled his eyes. "You make good money. You don't even go out much. What's the big deal? You're acting like we betrayed you or something." I didn't say anything, just kept staring. He huffed. "Whatever. Mom's freaking out. She says you're acting cold. Just come over, eat some chicken, and pretend it didn't happen like the rest of us." That was it. That was the moment the last string snapped. But I didn't yell. I didn't lose it. I didn't give him the drama he expected. I just said, "Tell her I'm busy, like you all were when you boarded that plane." Then I shut the door, hard, and for the first time in my life, I felt something like peace. Because I wasn't just shutting a door, I was shutting them out. For good. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from numbers I knew by heart. First up was Mom, her signature passive-aggressive style on full display. The text read, "We didn't want to stress you. You've been so tired lately. We thought you'd appreciate the quiet time instead." As if they were doing me a favor. As if forgetting to invite me and still using my money was somehow a gift. Then came Dad, trying his usual straightforward, "Let's not get emotional" approach. Someone had to be the responsible one. "Marcus, you know how these things go. You've always been the mature one." That one actually made me laugh, bitterly. Responsible, mature. What a poetic way to describe being treated like the family butler with a savings account. By noon, Aunt Lena chimed in with a group message, "We all thought you knew. It was a misunderstanding. Marcus, don't make this into something it's not." Ah yes, the good old misunderstanding defense, the same line they'd used when Shawn totaled the car I co-signed, or when Dad borrowed from my savings just until the end of the month. That month turned into 8. No payback, no explanation. I didn't respond, not to a single message. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and dove back into the spreadsheet I'd started. Only this time, I wasn't just tracking what I'd paid, I was building a map, a full audit of everything they'd taken emotionally, financially, even mentally. Receipts, dates, screenshots of every just until Friday promise. I even included text threads where I'd been guilted, manipulated, or dismissed. It wasn't just therapy, it was clarity. That night, I went through my folders and found the fireproof box under my bed. Inside were printouts of old receipts, canceled checks, and contracts. I snapped photos and uploaded them to a new Google Drive folder titled Vacation Fund. I labeled subfolders utilities, loans, medical, ignored messages, unpaid tabs. It was like watching my life play out in tabs and bullet points, like seeing every step where I'd said yes when I should have said heck no. It wasn't for revenge, not yet. It was for truth. The following week, I got another knock at the door. I didn't answer, just peeked through the peephole. It was Mom. She had a takeout bag probably from my favorite Thai place, and that look on her face, the one she used when she needed a ride somewhere but wanted to frame it like bonding. She knocked twice, waited 5 minutes, then walked away. Shoulders hunched, head down. I didn't move. I didn't breathe until the elevator dinged and her footsteps faded. That night, I logged into the joint bank account, the one I'd helped set up during Mom's knee recovery. I'd left about $6,000 in there just in case. Over the past year, they'd been withdrawing $40 here, $85 there, for groceries, household stuff, emergency oil change. Nothing I'd approved, nothing they asked about. I transferred every cent into a new account in my name, then shut the joint one down. Minutes later, Dad called. I didn't pick up. His voicemail. "Marcus, what happened to the account? Your mother tried to pay the water bill, and it was declined? This is getting ridiculous. We need to talk." "No, you need to listen." Over the next few weeks, the silence became my favorite sound. "No, can you pick this up on your way" texts. "No need a quick loan requests." No Sunday dinners where I was praised in one breath and used in the next. I reclaimed my time, my space, my sanity. But the thing about people like them, they don't quit. They regroup. It started with a notification from my credit monitoring service new inquiry made under your name from a travel agency. The same agency we used for Greece. I froze. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I checked my email. There it was. A forwarded message thread from Shawn. He accidentally CC'd me on an email with the agency asking about rebooking a similar package for the next family trip. And this is the part that made my blood run cold. Can you use the same card Marcus paid with last time should still be active? That's when I realized they never felt guilty. Not really. They missed the convenience of me, the safety net, the buffer I provided between their chaos and consequences, so I did what I had to do. I called the agency, told them that any use of that card for future bookings was unauthorized. I requested a fraud flag, a cancellation of any pending transactions, and a full lock on all future charges. Then, I requested a new card, new number, new protections. And next, I logged into my backup Google account, the one none of them knew existed. I uploaded the entire vacation fund folder, made a private shareable link. Then I drafted an email, not angry, not bitter, just factual, a timeline of events, a breakdown of expenses, a full audit of their betrayal. No capital letters, no insults, just a spreadsheet of disappointment. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Because something was brewing bigger, deeper, final. And then came the call that confirmed everything. Aunt Lena again, this time not a text, not a knock, a real call. When I answered, her voice was shaky. Marcus, I think you need to know what your mother just did. I didn't say a word. She applied for a personal loan. Still silent. In your name. The world tilted. She told me it was for a family emergency. Said you were on board. Asked me to co-sign. I got suspicious and called the bank myself. Marcus, she used your information. She said your credit would cover it. I sat down slowly. My hand gripped the edge of the desk like I needed to anchor myself. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Her voice cracked. Because I can't pretend anymore. I didn't know about the Greece trip until after. I thought you'd been invited. I only found out when she asked me to help with this loan. And when I hesitated, she got cold, snapped. Told me I was just making things harder. I closed my eyes. You deserve to know, she said. And I'm sorry it took this long. We hung up. And I sat there, the reality sinking in like oil in water. Slippery. Thick. Irretrievable. My mother, my own mother, was willing to commit financial fraud just to squeeze a little more out of me. And still expect me to bring wine to Sunday dinner. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to end with a spreadsheet. This was going to end with a storm. And I wasn't going to just weather it. I was going to be it. After Aunt Lena's call, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, fingers numb, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen. That little vertical line felt like it was taunting me, like it knew there was more to uncover. More betrayal buried under years of compliance. I opened the vacation fund folder again, but this time I added a new subfolder, fraudulent activity. I logged the call from Lena, timestamped it, then jotted down her exact words. I attached a note. Mom attempted to apply for a personal loan under my name, claimed I approved it, asked Lena to co-sign, confirmed as unauthorized. Then I did what I hadn't wanted to do for a long time. I called an old friend from college, Ian. He's a lawyer now, handles identity theft and financial disputes. We hadn't spoken in a couple of years, but when I explained the situation, he didn't even sound surprised. You'd be shocked how common this is, he said. Especially when your name is tied to your parents' finances. They start treating it like shared property. He gave me a list of things to do. Most of them I'd already started documenting everything. Changing passwords, freezing accounts. But then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. Pull your credit reports. All 3 bureaus, today? I did. And what I found made my stomach drop. There weren't just 1 or 2 inquiries in my name. There were 5. 2 were declined, thank God. But 3 had gone through. Small loans, store cards, 1 from a department store I hadn't stepped foot in since I was a teenager. I sat there, numb. Then I remembered something from a few months back, a weird charge on my credit card. Just $68.27 at a home goods store. I'd assumed it was a billing error and let it go. Now I knew better. They'd been doing this for a while. Slowly. Quietly. Testing the boundaries. seeing how far they could go before I noticed. And every time I didn't call it out, it reinforced their belief that they could get away with it. But not anymore. I called the bank, filed the dispute. Then I placed fraud alerts on my credit, locked my files with each bureau, notified the Federal Trade Commission, filed a preliminary police report not to press charges just yet, but to document the abuse in case I needed it. Then I messaged Ian again. Time to start drafting something formal. I wrote, cease and desist, asset review, legal notice. Let's go full throttle. He replied within 10 minutes. You sure? I didn't hesitate. Positive. If I don't do it now, they'll never stop. The next day, I woke up to 19 unread messages. Mom had texted again, this time trying to sound motherly. Marcus, you're blowing this out of proportion. We were going to talk to you this weekend. It's not what you think. Please don't overreact. Then came the kicker, you're being cruel. I actually laughed out loud. Cruel? Me. The same person who paid for their water bill last month. Who kept their lights on. Who paid for Shawn's wisdom teeth surgery and the follow-up because he forgot to book the post-op checkup. Cruel was watching your son hand over thousands of dollars without a thank you, then cutting him out of the vacation he helped fund. Cruel was applying for loans in his name and pretending it was a family favor. Cruel was pretending I was overreacting when I finally pushed back. Then Shawn jumped in with his signature smugness. You always do this when things don't go your way. Just fix it already and stop acting like a victim. You're embarrassing Mom. Embarrassing her. She should have been embarrassed trying to steal from her own son. I didn't respond. Not to him, not to her, not to anyone. Instead, I opened the draft email again. The one with the Google Drive link to the entire vacation fund folder, now expanded with subfolders for fraud, loan attempts, unauthorized inquiries, and receipts. I reread the draft, added one more line at the top. This isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. Then I paused. Not yet. There was still one more piece I needed to put in place. Something to shake the entire system. I opened my notes app and wrote out a timeline. Every favor, every loan, every guilt trip disguised as love, every manipulation. I listed birthdays where I paid for the whole dinner but wasn't even allowed to pick the restaurant. Every medical emergency where I paid without question. Every time they called me the reliable one when they really meant the ATM. Then I went back to the vacation booking. I dug through my email and found the invoice. The booking had been made under a group reservation. 8 guests, 1 card. Mine? I contacted the travel agency directly, spoke to a representative named Melissa. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. Mr. Reed, she said, that booking was under your name. You're the primary account holder. If you'd like to remove authorization from the secondary users or challenge charges, we can initiate that process. I paused, then I said yes, do it. She hesitated. This may create conflict. I know, I said, do it anyway. Once that was in motion, I sent a message to Ian. Green light on the cease and desist. He responded instantly on it. That night, I sat by the window, sipping coffee, staring at the blinking city lights. I wasn't just cutting them off financially, I was cutting them out completely. Because here's the thing. No one tells you about emotional betrayal. It doesn't always explode. Sometimes it erodes. Quietly, consistently. Until there's nothing left but exhaustion. And when you finally wake up and realize what's been happening, there's no room for a soft exit. You burn the bridge, you salt the earth. Because if you don't, they'll rebuild it and walk right back into your life like they never lit the match. The next morning, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hi, this is Kelly from Summit Lending Group. The voice said, we're just confirming that you've submitted a dispute for a recent loan application under your name. Yes, I said, my voice was steel. Perfect. We've frozen all pending requests under that identity. I also want to let you know that the applicant listed your phone number as their co-signer verification. If another attempt is made, you'll be notified immediately. Did she use her real name, I asked? A pause. I'm not at liberty to disclose that at this stage, she said carefully. But let's just say, you've done the right thing. When I hung up, I didn't feel relief. I felt ready. The final moves were coming, and they would never see them coming. I didn't wait long after the call from Summit Lending. The moment I hung up, I knew what I needed to do. The time for hesitation had passed. My family, the people who raised me, ate dinner with me, took photos with me in matching holiday pajamas, had tried to steal from me. This wasn't about emotional neglect anymore. This was theft, identity fraud, A betrayal so calculated, it deserved more than silence. It deserved consequences. I called Ian first. "It's time." I said simply. He didn't need clarification. He just said, "I'll file the paperwork today. They'll be served within the week." Then I logged into the email draft I'd been editing for days. Every time I looked at it, it had grown new documents, screenshots, receipts, voice recordings from voicemail transcripts. Now it was airtight. I took a deep breath, pasted the final line, "Don't contact me again unless it's through legal representation," and hit send. It was done. I sent it to everyone: Mom, Dad, Shawn, Aunt Lena, Uncle Derek, even my cousins who had stood beside my family in Greece while I paid for the trip from a couch in my small apartment. Within an hour, my phone blew up. I didn't answer a single call. The voicemails came in waves. First Mom, her voice wobbling between guilt and denial. "Marcus, please, this is all a misunderstanding. We were going to tell you about the loan. Your father thought it was temporary. You're blowing this out of proportion." Then Shawn, audibly angry, "You're nuking the whole family over a vacation and a couple of bills. Grow up. We were all just trying to help Mom and Dad stay afloat." Next was Dad, calm but icy. "You've made your point. Congratulations. Just remember, bridges don't rebuild themselves." I almost laughed at that one. Bridges. You burned them when you walked into that travel agency with my social security number. And then, just as I was about to put my phone on Do Not Disturb for good, a final text came in, this time from an unknown number. "You've made a mess. I hope you're proud. Shawn." No context, no apology, just a coward's parting shot. I forwarded everything to Ian. He responded with a thumbs up emoji and the words, "We're good to go." That afternoon, the cease and desist was formally issued. A certified letter went out to my parents with a breakdown of every unauthorized financial move. Attached was a formal warning: any attempt to access my accounts, use my name, or contact me directly would result in further legal action. The same letter went to Shawn, and the bank, and Summit Lending. That night, I got a call from Aunt Lena. She didn't try to justify it. She didn't beg. She just said, "I'm sorry, Marcus. I didn't know how far it had gone, but you did the right thing." For the first time in weeks, I believed someone, and then the dominoes really started falling. Within 2 days, my parents were denied another loan. Their credit had tanked. The pending fraud investigation froze their ability to refinance the house. According to Lena, they'd been counting on that money to stay afloat, and without it, they were hemorrhaging. They called Shawn for help. He had nothing. His accounts had always been bloated by mine. Then came the court summons. Shawn's smug email tone vanished. He tried to call me 3 times and left a single voicemail. Okay, you win, I'll pay you back. Just please don't take this to court. Ava's threatening to leave me if this goes public." Ava. His fiancée. The one who smiled in Santorini photos while I sat in the dark. Too little, too late. Ian filed the small claims suit that week. Breach of contract, unauthorized usage, emotional damages. The paperwork was clean, devastating, indisputable. Then came the cherry on top. I received an email from the department store where one of the fraudulent cards had been opened. I'd requested they verify the identity on file. Attached was a photo of the in-store application. It was Mom, smiling, holding her purse, standing next to a cashier as she handed over a card in my name. That image burned into my brain like a scar. I printed it out, folded it neatly, and added it to the folder under a new tab proof. At this point, there was no room for negotiation. I initiated a fraud investigation through the FTC. They took it seriously, even set a case manager to follow up weekly. With everything I documented, it was only a matter of time before formal charges were filed. I wasn't sure if she'd be arrested. I wasn't doing this to destroy them. I was doing it so they'd never touch my life again. Then, just when I thought I had tied every loose end, the final twist landed in my inbox. A message from Ava? Subject: I didn't know. Please read. Marcus. I had no idea they did this to you. I only found out when the accounts were frozen. Shawn told me bits and pieces, but he left out everything that made him look bad. I saw your folder. I read the emails. I know now. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not even asking you to respond. But I wanted you to know that I left him. I moved out last week. I'm staying with my sister. It was all too much: the lies, the secrets, the control. Thank you for showing me the truth, even if it wasn't meant for me. Ava. I read it 3 times. She wasn't innocent, but she was honest, and that counted for something. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the last email draft in my outbox, the one labeled Final Closure, and added Ava's message to the folder. Then I deleted the draft, because I didn't need closure from them. I'd already found it. It's been 6 months. 6 months since I sent that email. 6 months since I drew the line in permanent ink and said, enough. I moved, switched apartments, then cities, got a new job at a tech firm that actually values boundaries and mental health. No one here knows the Marcus who spent weekends fixing his parents' Wi-Fi or fronting his brother's rent with a forced smile. They know me, just me, and that's more than enough. The cease and desist held. Ian stayed on top of everything. The court case against Shawn settled. He repaid half the debt only because he had to after selling off his precious gaming setup and borrowing from friends who probably still don't know the full story. My parents, the fraud case didn't end in jail time. They negotiated it down, pled guilty to misuse of private information, and paid fines. But the fallout stuck. Their credit is trashed. The house is gone. They downsized into a cramped rental in a neighborhood Dad used to scoff at. They went from hosting family dinners in a polished 2-story home to heating canned soup on a stove with one working burner. I didn't rejoice when I heard that, but I didn't cry either. Aunt Lena still emails me occasionally, not often, just enough to remind me that someone noticed, someone saw the shift, and chose truth over tradition. I appreciate that more than I can say. Ava. She never wrote again. She didn't need to. Her final message was honest, raw, and in a strange way redemptive. I hope she's okay. I hope she's free. As for Shawn, I haven't heard his voice since that last voicemail. I don't plan to. And Mom, the woman who used to tuck me in at night and now carries the label fraud on a permanent financial record, she sent one last letter, a real one. Paper. Postmarked and sealed with a shaky signature. Inside a single handwritten page. Marcus, I won't pretend to understand everything you did, but I understand enough now to know that you meant it. I'm sorry for the trip, for the loan, for making you feel invisible. You were never just the responsible one. You were the son who stayed. And I'm sorry we forgot what that meant. If this is goodbye, I'll understand. Love always, Mom. I read it once, folded it, filed it away, and I didn't reply. Not because I'm still angry, but because peace doesn't always come with a conversation. Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it comes when you wake up in a quiet apartment, make your coffee, sit by the window, and feel nothing pulling you backward. No strings, no obligations. Just breath, just light. I used to think being the dependable one meant carrying everyone else, even when your own back was breaking. I wore that like a badge, like some twisted form of pride. But now I see it differently. Being dependable isn't about saying yes to everything. It's knowing when to say no. It's knowing when enough is enough. It's knowing that family, when toxic, doesn't get a pass just because they share your DNA. I didn't burn that bridge. They did. I just chose not to rebuild it. And that choice, that's what saved me. So no, I'm not going back. Not for Thanksgiving, not for birthdays, not for family emergencies. I'm building something new now, something healthier, and this time it's mine. All mine. Story 2. My name's Nate. I'm 32, living in Temecula, California wine country, sunshine, and just enough quiet to feel normal. But my family, they're anything but normal. At least, not in a way you want. Katie and I had been together for 7 years, married for 3. When she told me she was pregnant, everything shifted. I stood there holding the positive test, stunned, scared, but mostly amazed. This was the best kind of surprise. We told our families right away. Katie's parents, over the moon. Her dad cried like a baby, and her mom immediately started knitting tiny blankets. They asked about nursery themes and baby names before we could even blink. My family, well, that was a different story. I called Mom first. She was silent for a moment. Then a cold, confused huh came through the phone. Dad, ever the pragmatist, asked, already as if I'd broken some secret rule about when you're allowed to start a family. Then he switched topics, launching into a detailed description of some landscaping project in the backyard. That was it. Still, I thought they'd show up for the baby shower. The shower was at my Aunt Danielle's place, a big house nestled in the hills. Danielle and Uncle Mark had always been like second parents to me. She went all-out decorations, catering, even custom cookies with baby Collins iced in delicate pink and blue. Katie's family arrived early, carrying arms full of gifts and homemade food. Her cousins flew in from Arizona with a giant diaper cake that looked like a fridge. People I hadn't seen in years came to celebrate. Everyone but my parents. No text, no call, no sign. I tried to convince myself they were just running late, maybe a flight delay, but my gut told me otherwise. Midday, while everyone was outside taking pictures by the welcome baby banner, I slipped inside and checked my phone. A text from Mom. "This vacation is not for us. You're not even a real family." I didn't respond. Didn't tell Katie right away. I just stared at the screen, numb. It wasn't the words, it was the timing. They chose our moment, the day we celebrated new life, to make me feel like I was nothing. I later found out through my cousin Rebecca that they were in Maui first-class flights, 5-star hotel, cocktails by the pool. Mom was tagged in a post, clinking glasses with some influencer she'd met. Finally doing what we want. The caption read, "That night, after everyone left, Katie and I sat quietly on the couch. I scrolled through their vacation photos, feeling the weight of their indifference. Katie's glow from the shower contrasted sharply with the coldness from my parents. Something inside me snapped. I logged into our joint bank account, the one I'd set up years ago when their business folded, the one I'd quietly been funding for years. $15,000 was sitting there, untouched. I transferred it all to my personal account and closed the joint account. No explanation, no apology, just fine. The next morning, my phone exploded. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails, a string of desperate texts. Mom's tone changed from cold to frantic. "Where's the money? Something's wrong. Call me. Nate." Dad sent question marks. That afternoon, they called from a hotel landline. Their credit card bounced. Autopay failed. Uber accounts frozen. They were stuck in paradise without a dime. I didn't answer. I went out with Katie, bought paint for the nursery, had lunch, didn't check my phone once. On day 3, the tone shifted again from demands to desperation. A week later, they showed up at my door. Rebecca warned me they'd cut their vacation short. When they rang the bell 5 times before I opened, I already knew this wasn't going to be easy. Mom looked exhausted. Dad was tense, arms crossed, clinging to whatever pride he had left. She raised a trembling hand. "Please, son, help us. Talk to us." But this wasn't just about money. I hadn't told anyone in the family about the account closure, but news traveled fast. My grandparents were already waiting in the living room. They didn't know what was coming, and they just showed up quietly. When I opened the door to see my parents standing there with suitcases and my grandparents watching from the couch, I knew everything was about to change. Mom walked in first, acting like it was just another misunderstanding. Dad followed, cautiously scanning the room. They still thought they controlled the narrative. They didn't even sit down. Mom launched into excuses, thinly veiled jabs disguised as concern. "We didn't know it meant so much. We needed a break. You know how stressful things have been?" Like a poorly rehearsed monologue from a panic-stricken actor. I let them finish. When they ran out of words, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why did you take a vacation with money I earned?" Mom blinked. Dad looked away. No answer. Then Grandma spoke. Her voice cut through the tension like a sharp knife. "He doesn't owe you anything." They turned, shocked, as if seeing her for the first time. "We helped you buy your first house. We bailed you out after the dealership collapsed. We paid your legal fees." Never once asked for a cent. But this pointing at me, this was their son. Mom looked ready to argue. Grandpa stopped her. Just don't. You're not here to apologize. You're here because the money stopped." Dad opened his mouth to defend himself, but silence swallowed his words. The weight of truth was heavier than anything they'd ever thrown at me. Then I spoke. I told them I was done. No more money, no more bailouts, no more joint accounts. If they wanted to live this life, they'd do it without my help. I told them to leave their suitcases on the porch. They were not staying. Katie and I were starting our family. This was the only family I was choosing now. They were stunned not by my words, but because they knew I meant it. No guilt, no manipulation, no going back. Mom finally broke, real tears. Dad looked like he was watching his world burn, but they left quietly, suitcases in hand. After the door closed behind them, Grandma hugged me. No praise, no speeches, just a long, quiet embrace. Grandpa asked if we had enough for the baby. When I said yes, he slipped me an envelope. No words, just a reminder to stay strong, because cutting them off was just the beginning. The morning after my parents left, silence filled the house like a thick fog. Katie and I kept busy with the nursery, painting walls a soft gray. assembling the crib, folding tiny clothes. But my phone, it buzzed constantly. Texts, missed calls, voicemails from mom and dad. The tone shifted quickly from coldness to pleading. "Where's the money? We're struggling. Nate, you don't understand how hard it is. Please just talk to us." I ignored them. I'd made my decision, no more enabling. Then social media exploded. Mom posted a vague status. "When your own child turns his back after all you've done?" The comments flooded in friends, distant relatives, people I hadn't heard from in years, all siding with her, telling her to be strong and give me time. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a message to the entire family group, chat 23 people, cousins, aunts, uncles, in-laws, attaching screenshots of mom's text, bank statements, and proof of the support I'd given them over the last 4 years. No explanation, just the facts. I wrote, "I'm done being used. Katie and I are starting a family. We're not funding people who spit on us in public and cry for us in private. If you have a problem, delete my number." Then I turned off my phone for the weekend. That weekend was a breath of fresh air. Katie and I opened windows to let spring air wash away the tension. I played music while painting, savoring the smell of new life in the room. Peace felt earned, hard won. But peace is fragile. On Wednesday, Mom showed up at my workplace. No call, no text, just walked in, sunglasses on like she was still sipping cocktails in Maui. I saw her through the glass, told the receptionist not to let her in, then went to the back. She paced the lobby for 20 minutes, pretending to wait for someone, then left without a word. 2 hours later, Dad sent me an email with the subject line, "Talk." No message, just a link to a Dropbox folder. Curious, I opened it. Inside was a sad little museum: PDFs, receipts, screenshots, photos of family events. A desperate attempt to prove they were involved parents. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer, Steve. A couple of years earlier, when Katie and I had discussed buying a rental property, Steve had impressed me sharp. No nonsense, no games. I told him about the escalating situation with my parents. "Can I legally stop them from accessing anything in my name?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "more common than you'd think." We drafted a cease and desist letter, firm but calm. Any attempt to access my finances or contact me through work would be considered harassment. I printed it, slipped it under Mom's apartment door the next day, and walked away. They lived in a fancy complex, a $4 and $200 monthly rent with a gym, pool, gated parking. I knew they couldn't afford it without me. That was the point. A week later, Danielle told me they'd put the apartment up for sublet. That's when the real chaos began. Rebecca texted me, "You have to see what's happening at Grandma's." I thought it was about her health. It wasn't. When I arrived at my grandparents' quiet home in Many, I saw Dad's car in the driveway, trunk open, suitcases on the floor. Mom was on the porch arguing with Grandma, who stood firm, arms crossed. Dad stayed silent, letting Mom carry the battle. Grandma said something that stopped Mom in her tracks. Mom saw me across the street and froze. Dad followed her gaze. Neither said a word. I walked up slowly. Grandma smiled. "I'm glad you came." Mom stepped forward, trying to start a conversation. I cut her off. "You're not moving in here." She opened her mouth to protest. I continued, "You used me. You skipped your grandchild's baby shower to drink on the beach. Then you cried broke when the bill came. Now you're dragging your bags to your 78-year-old mother's doorstep like it's a fallback plan." "No." Dad tried to be the peacemaker. "Let's talk like adults." Grandpa answered from the doorway. "No, and you two need to leave." Mom scoffed like it was a joke. "You're supposed to help your parents when they're older," she said. Grandpa shook his head. "You're not older, you're just lazy." He turned to me. "Get the key, Nate." For years, my grandparents had kept a spare key under a frog statue by the sidewalk. It was a courtesy, not a right. I grabbed the key, handed it to Grandpa. He opened the trunk, placed the bags neatly on the sidewalk, then locked the door deadbolt and all. Mom stood there, speechless, like someone had ripped the script out of her hands. No arguments. They got in the car and left. Later that night, Grandma called. No talk of the drama, just a simple question. "Does Katie need anything for the baby?" I said no. She sent a check anyway. That week, Katie and I had our last ultrasound. Everything was perfect. Healthy baby, strong heartbeat. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't send pictures. Didn't want to leave any crack for them to wedge back in. The baby wasn't even here yet, and I already knew what kind of father I was going to be. The exact opposite of them. But they weren't done. Not by a long shot. It started with a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. Handwritten, slipped into our mailbox. No return address. But the handwriting, Mom's. Inside were 3 pages. Page 1, classic guilt trip. We did our best. Parents aren't perfect. Blood is blood. You'll understand when your kid turns on you. Page 2, a laundry list of supposed expenses. Gas money when I was in college. A down payment they never made. Meals they never forgot. Half exaggerated, half just normal parent stuff. Page 3, a plea. We just need a little help. Temporary, to get through the month. Then the kicker. If you can't help us, maybe Katie's parents can. They're fine. That cut deep. I put the letter down, stepped outside, tried to steady my breathing. By now, Danielle was firmly on my side. Rebecca stopped returning Mom's calls. Even Linda, the cousin who called me dramatic, apologized after seeing how far they'd sunk. I wrote back, calm and cold. No emotion, just one sentence. You lost access to my life the day you chose a cocktail in Hawaii over your first grandchild. I mailed it. 2 days later, Katie's dad called. He told me my parents had shown up at their door unannounced. Made up stories about me cutting them off unfairly. Claimed they just wanted to be part of Eliza's life. Said I was struggling financially and Katie didn't know. Katie's dad listened, then told them to leave. Said if they came back, he'd call the police. That's when it hit me. My parents weren't just desperate. They were humiliated. They'd do anything, lie, manipulate to save face, to fix the story. So I took one last step, called Steve, told him to file a formal notice of financial separation. No drama, just clear legal boundaries. No responsibility, no contact. He sent me the documents. I forwarded them to my parents' email. I haven't heard from them since. A week later, our baby girl was born, Eliza. Katie held her first. I held her second. In that moment, standing in that quiet hospital room, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel conflict. I felt clean, like a chapter was finally closed. But there's one thing I want you to remember. This story didn't end with a letter. It ended with a choice. 2 months passed since Eliza's birth, and life finally felt like ours. Days blurred into a beautiful chaos of bottles, diaper changes, sleepless nights, and soft lullabies. Katie was incredible, the strongest person I know. Her parents visited often but never overstayed. They brought food, helped with house projects, and filled the quiet house with warmth. Danielle stopped by with homemade meals and jokes. Grandma sent knitted socks and a tiny gold bracelet engraved with Eliza's initials. The calm was healing. Then, one night while I was feeding Eliza, my phone buzzed with an email. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Phil, an old family friend who used to be close to Dad. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." Inside was a screenshot of a GoFundMe titled, "Help us reconnect with our grandson." The description was full of lies. That I had emotionally abandoned them, that they were financially cut off, struggling to survive. That I was keeping them from seeing Eliza. Photos of me as a kid, my parents smiling with me at Christmas. They painted themselves as victims. The fundraiser had already raised $1,800. Comments poured in from strangers. No grandparent should be kept from their grandchild. This generation is heartless. I laughed. For about 5 seconds, then anger hit. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reputation. They didn't care about Eliza. They cared about being seen as the good guys, about rewriting the story before the truth could stick. But this wasn't their story to flip. So I made my own move. I contributed to the fundraiser, not out of pity, not for revenge, but to share the truth. I uploaded a photo of Katie holding Eliza in the nursery. No names, no backstory, just a caption. "We are raising our daughter in peace, without manipulation or guilt. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to hurt you twice." And then I posted it and walked away. Within a week, the fundraiser was taken down. Who reported it? Maybe family, maybe Phil, maybe one of the many strangers who privately messaged me to say they donated then asked for refunds. My parents went dark. No more letters. No more calls, just silence. A month later, I received a handwritten card in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo of Grandma and Grandpa holding Eliza the last time we visited. Their faces were peaceful, proud. Alongside it was a note, simple and clear: "We broke the cycle with you. You broke it for her." That's how healing begins. I keep that card in my desk drawer. Sometimes, when Eliza is asleep, I take it out and remind myself what I did was right. Because cutting my parents off wasn't just about ending a toxic cycle. It was about building something new. A family that chooses each other every day. Life has changed. I'm no longer weighed down by guilt or false obligation. I'm free to be the father Eliza deserves. I watch her learn to walk, chase shadows, and laugh with abandon. Katie and I talk about the future without fear. We dream of trips and holidays where the only drama is choosing what to pack. The family I thought I had is gone, but the one I'm building, it's stronger than I ever imagined. And while my parents' voices echo in the background, spinning their tales of victimhood, I know the truth. I'm not the one who abandoned family. I'm the one who saved it by knowing when to walk away. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I miss them, I don't. Not because I'm cold, but because I've finally learned what love is and what it isn't. Love doesn't demand you sacrifice yourself. Love doesn't punish kindness. Love isn't silence when you need to be heard. To anyone out there struggling with family that drains more than they give, know this. You're allowed to set boundaries. Yeah, you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect your peace. Months passed, and the silence from my parents stretched into a quiet that felt like both an ending and a beginning. Katie and I settled into a rhythm, learning each other and parenting in ways that felt natural, not forced. Eliza grew stronger every day, her first steps shaky but determined, much like the path I had taken to reclaim my own life. I often thought about how family is more than blood. It's who shows up, who supports you without strings, who lifts you without draining you, who loves you without keeping score. Katie's parents became the family I could count on. Their unconditional support, the steady presence, the warm Sunday dinners, these were the real gifts. My grandparents, too, became a beacon of hope and kindness. They never judged. They never demanded. They simply loved. The day Grandma visited with a basket of hand-picked herbs for my windowsill was one of those small moments that made everything feel right. Despite the years of pain and betrayal, I didn't carry bitterness. I carried lessons. Occasionally, I heard news about my parents through distant relatives or social media whispers. They were living modestly, far from the life they once flaunted. Rumors swirled about failed attempts at making amends, half-hearted apologies, and ongoing victim narratives. But none of that mattered, because I had my own story now, a story of resilience, boundaries, and healing. One quiet evening, Katie and I sat on the porch after putting Eliza to bed. The sky was painted with stars, and the world felt peaceful. She reached over, squeezed my hand, and said, "You did good." In that moment, I realized I didn't just survive my family's toxicity. I had thrived despite it. I made a promise to myself and to Eliza that I would never let anyone make us feel small again. That I would teach her to recognize love that lifts, not love that consumes. Sometimes, when the night is still, I pull out that old card from Grandma. I look at her handwriting, the photo of her and Grandpa with Eliza. I feel that thread of family, real family holding strong, and I know this. Cutting ties was not the end. It was the start of something better. A family rebuilt on truth, on respect, on choice. If you're reading this and feel trapped by family ties that drain you, remember this story. Remember Nate's journey? Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what no longer serves you. Story 3. I was 16 when my mother stood in the doorway of my bedroom and told me flat out, "You're stupid. You can't live here anymore." Not in anger. Not out of frustration like it was the obvious truth. The kind she'd been waiting to say for a while. I just blinked at her, stunned. The words echoed off the walls filled with my childhood memories, posters my dad helped me hang, my neatly lined up shoes under the desk, the bed I'd slept in for years. It didn't feel real. Behind her, like clockwork, my stepfather Greg swaggered into the hallway, a can of cheap beer in one hand and a grin stretched across his face. "That's right," he shouted. "This is a place for our family now." My mom giggled as if this were a sitcom punchline, like kicking me out was some kind of joke. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I just grabbed my backpack, my duffel, my laptop, a few notebooks, and even my dad's picture off the nightstand without thinking. I walked out that day carrying the pieces of my life in my arms. It was barely a year since my dad died in that car crash. He was my rock-honest, hard-working, always fixing things around the house. When he was gone, my world shattered. Mom cried for weeks. Then she stopped. Instead, she brought Greg home from some community barbecue, like fate was handing her a new script. Greg moved in a week later, dragging his daughter Haley with him. Haley was 18, quiet, keeping to herself, not much of a problem. Greg, though, he never worked, said he was between jobs, but all he did was drink, smoke in the garage, and reminisce about better days while Mom seemed to drift further away from the woman I knew. She stopped talking about Dad, took down his photos, sold his tools, even his favorite chair disappeared. Greg lived off her paycheck, her savings, everything Dad had left us. And then, just like that, they kicked me out. I walked 2 miles to my Uncle Ray's house without calling first. He opened the door, saw my bag, and just said, "Come on in." No questions, no judgment, just leftover spaghetti and a spare room above his garage filled with fishing gear and old car parts. The next morning, over breakfast, he leaned in and said, "You know the house is still in your mom's name, right?" I shrugged. Confused? Of course it was. Dad left it to her. Ray's eyes went sharp. "No, it's not that simple. Your dad's will has clauses. If your mom tries to kick you out before you turn 18, there'll be consequences. She can't just do that." Ray pulled out paperwork, lawyer names, everything. "It's time to fight back," he said. I wasn't sure at first. Revenge wasn't on my mind. But then I remembered Mom's laughter, Greg's pride, how they made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. 4 days later, Ray started the legal battle. The papers hit Mom's doorstep, and the battle was on. I watched from my uncle's window as they pulled up in Greg's sputtering pickup. Mom ran to the door, sobbing, begging me to come back. Greg stayed in the truck, red-eyed and furious, clutching his beer like it was all he had left. Ray stood firm on the porch, calm but unyielding, explaining that Mom had violated the trust, that the house was technically hers, but she didn't have the right to throw me out. Greg lost it. He stormed inside, smashed a window, yelled my name like I was the enemy. The neighbors came out. Ray didn't flinch. The court case moved fast. Greg's tantrums got worse, showing up drunk at school, yelling at anyone who would listen that I was the one stealing his life. Mom sent me desperate texts, swinging between apologies and threats. I didn't reply. I had Ray and the law on my side. Then came the big reveal, a clause no one expected. If Mom's new husband benefited financially while I was still a minor, the whole estate could be contested. That meant the house, the savings, even the car. Greg had been freeloading using Dad's tools, driving his car, living rent-free. We had proof. The final court date loomed. Greg broke in one night, smashing the garage window, destroying property. I called the cops and Ray arrived within minutes. Greg was arrested, but the fight wasn't over. Mom showed up weeks later, shattered, begging for another chance, but I told her I was done. When the eviction notice came, Haley took it silently. Greg was in jail. Mom moved away. The house was mine again, but I didn't move back right away. Even with the legal victory, the house felt haunted by memories and threats. When Greg showed up 3 weeks after I moved in, standing outside the back door like a ghost, I knew the battle wasn't over. Ray installed cameras, called the cops when Greg threatened us. The harassment escalated, but I stayed strong. One night, glass shattered, someone threw rocks through the window. A note said, "You think you're safe. You're nothing without your dad's money." Ray and I knew this was war. The final court ruling came down hard. Greg lost everything. The restraining order was extended. Jail time awaited if he came near us again. Mom vanished. The house finally felt like home. I painted the walls, fixed the floors, rebuilt the shelves with Ray's help. One night, cooking dinner, I realized Greg tried to take everything, but in the end, I got it all back. Especially the house. Even after Greg and Mom were gone, the shadow they left behind felt heavy. I'd won the house, but it didn't feel like a victory so much as a pause in a long war. The first weeks back in the house were a strange mix of relief and unease. I was finally home, but every creak, every distant noise made me jump. I kept checking the locks, triple-checking windows. The smell of stale smoke lingered in the garage, and the faint scent of beer clung to the living room couch. Ray was my anchor. He checked in daily, helped with repairs, brought me dinner when I was too exhausted to cook, but he never pushed me to rush back or forget what had happened. School was my refuge. I buried myself in classes, tried to keep grades up, and avoided the whispers and sideways glances from classmates. Greg's drunken rants at school had made me a target. Some kids thought it was a joke. Others looked at me with sympathy that felt like pity. Neither was comfortable. Then came the letter. I found it taped to the front door one afternoon. No signature, no return address, just black marker scrawled across the top. "You think this is over? You stole my life." It was Greg's handwriting, unmistakable. The letter was full of threats, promises of revenge. claims that I'd ruined him and stolen everything he'd worked for. I called Ray immediately. We filed a police report. This time, they took it seriously. A restraining order was issued, forbidding Greg from coming within 500 feet of me or the house, but the threats didn't stop. Greg escalated. One night, he smashed the garage door open. Tools and boxes were destroyed, nothing stolen. On the wall, spray painted in red, the words, "You'll never get rid of me." I was terrified but determined. Ray helped me board up windows, change locks again, and install a security system. We hired a private investigator to track Greg's movements. Every violation of the restraining order was documented. Greg was spiraling. Arrests piled up for drunkenness, vandalism, and assaulting officers. Mom didn't help. She stayed silent or sent half-hearted apologies. When I confronted her, she admitted she'd known about Greg's threats but felt powerless to stop him. Eventually, she told me she was leaving Greg, afraid for her own safety. It was hard to believe she'd finally chosen a side, but I had to. Then came the fire. One night, someone lit a small blaze in the alley behind the house. Firefighters put it out quickly, but it was clearly intentional, a warning. The police didn't mess around this time. The arson investigation began, and the DA promised serious charges. I couldn't sleep for weeks. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind made me jump. The court hearing was swift. Greg barely showed up. Looking disheveled and defeated, he denied everything, accused me of ruining his life. The judge wasn't buying it. The restraining order was extended with maximum penalties. If Greg came near again, jail time was automatic. For once, I felt some peace, but peace was fragile. One afternoon, Mom appeared on my porch unannounced, holding divorce papers. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been through hell. She begged me to believe she was done with Greg, that she was scared for all of us. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, but years of broken promises made it impossible. I told her this was the last time we talked, then blocked her number. Slowly, life started to settle. Ray and I spent weekends fixing the house. We replaced old curtains, repainted walls, cleaned out the garage. I was making it mine. School continued. I found some friends who didn't ask about Greg or my family drama. It was the first time I felt like a normal teenager. Then, the unexpected happened. Haley, Greg's daughter, reached out through a text. "We're leaving," she said simply, "moving out of state, away from all the chaos." She admitted she didn't blame me for not sticking around. That was the last time I heard from her. Months later, the house was quiet. The porch swing was gone. The old ceramic frog from Mom's garden ended up in the trash. I still lived with the weight of everything that had happened, but for the first time, I was hopeful. One evening, I sat in the living room, looking around at the empty walls where Haley's posters had been. I felt something new, peace, not the kind born of victory or revenge, but the calm after the storm. Greg tried to take everything from me, my home, my family, my sense of safety, but in the end, he walked away with nothing. And I got it all back, especially the house. Life after the storm was quiet but far from simple. I had my house back, but the wounds visible and invisible weren't healed overnight. Every corner held a memory, and every sound seemed to echo with the past. I kept busy, determined to make the house feel like home again. The first real project was the backyard. Greg had let it go to ruin, overgrown weeds, broken fence panels, trash strewn about. With Ray's help, we cleared it out piece by piece. It was exhausting work, but watching the space transform gave me hope. I planted flowers where wild weeds had grown, fixed the fence, and set up a small garden where I could grow vegetables. School life shifted too. With Greg out of the picture and the restraining orders in place, I felt less like a target. Friends stopped whispering and staring. Some even approached me with genuine concern, offering support instead of judgment. It was a relief. Katie, my girlfriend who had stuck by me through everything, was my anchor during this time. She visited whenever she could, bringing laughter and warmth into the house. She didn't try to fix the broken parts of my story. She just sat beside me and listened when I needed to talk. One afternoon, while working in the backyard, I found an old baseball buried under a pile of leaves. It was scuffed and faded but still solid. It reminded me of Dad, of the games we played, the advice he gave me about never backing down. That ball became a symbol not just of what I'd lost, but of what I was building. Strength, resilience, a future beyond the chaos. The family drama didn't stop entirely, though. My mom, after leaving Greg, tried reaching out a few times. mostly emails, sometimes texts, half apologies, half pleas, but I kept my distance. I realized that some bridges, once burned, don't need rebuilding. I needed to focus on what was healthy, not what was familiar. The hardest part was Haley. She was caught in the crossfire between her father and me, the unwilling witness to the unraveling. After she left, I thought I'd never hear from her again. But one day, out of nowhere, she sent me a message. "I'm sorry," she wrote, "for everything. I never wanted this." It was brief, but it meant more than I expected. I replied simply, "Take care of yourself." That was all we needed. No bitterness, no blame, just a quiet acknowledgement of shared pain. At school, I started volunteering at the community center, helping younger kids with homework, organizing weekend sports events. It gave me purpose beyond the house and the past. One of the kids reminded me of myself, quiet, unsure, carrying invisible burdens. I wanted to be the person who made things easier for him. Unlike what I'd experienced, the court case against Greg dragged on longer than I wanted. But with Ray and our lawyer pushing, justice moved forward. Greg was sentenced to probation with strict conditions. The arson charge carried a heavy fine and mandatory counseling. More importantly, the restraining order became permanent. Greg wasn't just legally barred from the house, he was barred from my life. As months passed, the house grew warmer. I added photos of my own friends, Katie, moments of laughter. The walls no longer felt like silent witnesses to a battle, but like a canvas for new memories. I replaced the broken porch light with a new fixture that bathed the front porch in soft amber light. I installed shelves in my room and filled them with books and trophies from school and sports. One day, Ray surprised me with a gift, a restored wooden rocking chair, handcrafted and polished. He said it was from his dad, a reminder that family isn't just blood, it's the people who stand by you. That chair became my favorite spot. I'd sit there at night, watching the sunset, feeling like I was reclaiming not just a house but my life. Katie and I talked seriously about our future. We dreamed about moving in together, about building a family without the scars of the past. The idea of children, of a home filled with laughter, not fear, kept me going on the hardest days. One crisp autumn evening, I took Katie to the backyard garden. The flowers were blooming, and the air smelled like fresh earth and rain. I pulled her close and whispered, "We're going to be okay." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "We already are." The night before the final court hearing, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock and the soft hum of the heater. I thought about the journey, the loss, the fight, the scars, and what lay ahead. The past wasn't going away, but it didn't have to define me anymore. When the judge read the final verdict, I felt a weight lift. The house was mine. The restraining orders were permanent. Greg was done. For good. That night, I called my mom one last time. "I hope you find peace," I said. She was silent for a moment. "Goodbye, Kevin," she whispered. And just like that, it was over. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and opened the front door. The sunrise spilled golden light across the porch. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly home. The weeks after the court's final decision were different. The constant tension that had hung over the house began to lift. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. I started filling my days with things that didn't remind me of Greg or my mother's betrayal. Mornings were spent in the garden, watching plants grow where weeds once ruled. I planted tomatoes, sunflowers, and marigolds, little symbols of resilience. School was easier, too. With the drama behind me, I focused on classes, made plans for college, and reconnected with friends I drifted away from. People saw me less as the kid caught in a nightmare and more as someone who had fought through it. Katie remained my rock. She came over every evening, and we cooked dinners together, shared music, and dreamed aloud about a future far from the chaos. Sometimes we just sat in silence, her head on my shoulder, the kind of peace I'd never known before. One evening, after a long day of painting the living room, I found myself standing in my old room. The walls were a soft blue now, a color I chose to symbolize calm. I ran my hand over the freshly sanded windowsill and smiled. This was my space again, my sanctuary. That night, I dreamt of Dad, not the man who left, but the one who had taught me to be strong, to never back down. I woke up feeling closer to him than I had in years. My grandparents were a constant source of support. Grandma visited often, bringing baked goods and warm smiles. Grandpa stopped by on weekends to help with yard work or just sit on the porch and share stories. They never pried or asked about the past, they just showed up, steady and sure. One afternoon, Grandma gave me a small wooden box. Inside was a collection of Dad's old tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, and a hammer, all worn but well cared for. "For when you're ready," she said softly. I kept that box on my desk, a reminder that even broken things can be fixed with care and time. The house gradually transformed. I painted every room, fixed the creaky floors, and replaced the old curtains with new ones. Ray helped with the wiring and installed better locks on all the doors and windows. I made the garage into a workshop, a place where I could tinker and create without fear. It became my refuge, a place where the past's shadows couldn't reach me. But peace wasn't just about the house or the court orders. It was about the choices I made every day to forgive, to heal, to move forward without carrying bitterness. I started therapy, talking about everything: the loss, the betrayal, the anger was hard, but it was the first time I realized I didn't have to carry it alone. The counselor helped me see that my worth wasn't defined by their cruelty or my past. At school, I joined the debate club. Standing in front of people, making my voice heard, was a way to reclaim power I thought I'd lost. It helped me find confidence I never knew I had. Friends noticed the change. One day, a classmate said, "You're different now, Kevin, stronger." I just nodded, feeling proud but humble. I was learning who I really was. Katie and I started talking seriously about the future. We dreamed of college, maybe moving to a city where nobody knew our story. Somewhere peaceful, where we could build a life without fear or shadows. We even joked about adopting a dog, something to fill the quiet nights with warmth and life. Despite everything, I didn't hate my mother. I stopped expecting her to be someone she wasn't. I accepted that some people are broken in ways they can't or won't fix. I wished her well from afar. The last time we spoke was that phone call after the court. That was enough. One summer evening, I sat on the porch with Ray, watching the sun dip below the horizon. We didn't say much. Words weren't necessary. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You did good, kid. You fought hard and didn't lose yourself." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words. The next day, I walked into my room, looked around at the fresh paint, the organized shelves, and the posters I'd put up, a mix of bands I loved and landscapes I dreamed of visiting. I pulled out Dad's old baseball glove from the box and rubbed the worn leather. It still smelled like him. For the first time, I felt whole. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the journey, the pain, the fight, the slow rebuilding. I realized that family isn't always about blood or who shares a roof. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when the world turns its back. And for me, that family was here. Not the one who kicked me out, not the one who drank and lied, but the ones who stood by me, the ones who believed in me. Life isn't perfect, and maybe it never will be, but it's mine, and that's enough.